Hello there, welcome to the CMBA's latest series, where we feature some of our industry's best thinkers tackling today's challenges. My name is Cody Charfauros with Slatt Capital, and I sit on the Commercial Real Estate Committee as a board member for the Commercial Mortgage Bankers Association. Just a quick plug for the CMBA. If you are a member, I want to take this opportunity on behalf of the board of directors to say thank you. Your involvement through the political action initiatives of the CMBA and other involvement and with our strategic partners helps ensure lawmakers in our state and by extension the rest of the country make informed decisions given the difficult environment that we're in. And if you're not a member, please consider membership. In addition to industry updates such as these and the conferences we're known for, our organization does a tremendous amount behind the scenes to help ensure the ongoing health of our industry. Feel free to reach out to me or check out the website at cmba.com for more info on membership. Today, we're talking valuations in the COVID era. And to lend his deep expertise on the subject, I'm honored to have my industry colleague and friend, David Rosenthal from Curtis-Rosenthal, Inc. David, welcome, and thanks for being with me today.
Thank you, Cody. Thanks so much for inviting me. This is a great opportunity and a great honor to be able to help kick off this new series.
Great. Well, before we jump in, David, why don't you give us some background about you and your firm?
Be happy to. Curtis-Rosenthal is a firm that I started with a partner in 1983. I'd love to say that was when we were both 6 years old, but we've been around for quite a while. We've been appraising commercial real estate throughout California for a very long time. We've seen a number of cycles, and that really gives us some insight into what's going on in this cycle. We've been friends and supporters of the CMBA and all of the mortgage bankers and life company lenders out there for a very long time. In fact, I believe we're one of the only continuous sponsors of the CMBA CREF conference since its inception in the late 80s.
Yeah, well, thank you for your loyalty. It's very much appreciated by all of us. And very good, sir. That really helped us orient us right into this conversation. As I mentioned up front, we've noticed a number of COVID-related shifts in our industry. And part of what we're looking for today is to understand what landlords, brokers, lenders are wondering about how property values might be affected due to all of our collective experiences, the volatility of shutdowns, restaurant closings, et cetera. At the same time, I've noticed in my business that some appraisals are coming in with COVID-related discounts as an explicit line item, often without the benefit of actual comps or their data. So have you seen that sort of thing going on with your assignments yet? And how, in general, is the entire industry players looking at values?
Cody, I've got to tell you, that's a really interesting and challenging topic these days. Since COVID first hit, appraisers have been trying to figure out how will people in the marketplace be responding to the shutdown orders and just the global changes in how people act and react and how people work and shop and play. There are no rules of thumb as far as this goes, and the answers really vary by property type, by location. It's a very granular kind of thing. I can tell you I've had experience reviewing other appraisals that we've seen and working with other appraisers, seeing such a wide variety of opinions, some well-founded and some not so well-founded. We've seen ranges in the marketplace of changes due to COVID, ranging from no change at all up to some opinions that property values have changed by as much as 25%. And it really depends on the specific circumstance, the particular property type, and exactly what's going on with the tenants in that property. And we can get into that in a little bit more detail if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of alluded to it, but I think it's obvious to most of us how COVID has affected retail, hotels. But I mean, generally, what asset classes have been weakened, or even which ones have been strengthened with regards to value in COVID? How are people looking at essentially everything?
Well, here's the curious thing. Let's start with retail. That has a variety of different types of reactions to COVID, depending on the retail itself. I think strip retail shopping centers that don't have an anchor, that are made up largely of restaurants, they've been hurt tremendously. As the restaurants have been closed down, those tenants have been challenged to pay their rent. On the other hand, if you have, say, a grocery anchored shopping center, the grocer is probably doing great. A lot of grocers are going gangbusters today and running a terrific volume, and that helps to drive traffic. There are wide varieties depending on the makeup of the tenancy in a particular shopping center. And so, as I said before, it gets granular, and it really depends on an understanding of who the tenants are, how their businesses are doing, and how they're going to survive through COVID. So that's kind of on the retail front. Office is a whole nother story, and that's a big question mark. So far, I think office tenants, for the most part, have continued to pay their rent, in large part because a lot of office tenants have been propped up by PPP loans that are specifically geared toward paying their rent and paying their payroll. Those funds are just about drying up. There's a second round of PPP funds that are getting out to tenants right now. But I think many office owners today are dealing with their tenants on a one-by-one basis, trying to be as realistic as they can with their tenants about whether the tenants can afford to pay rent or not. I know the landlord in my own building. I just spoke with him a couple of days ago, and he said they're open to working with tenants, but the tenants have to prove to them that their business is down and that they really don't have the revenues to make their rent payments. If they do, then they need to pay the rent. And I think landlords are looking at it from that perspective, because as my landlord told me the other day, his lenders are not giving him any forgiveness, and so he can't afford to really give his tenants forgiveness unless they really need it. I think the bigger question mark will come up as leases start to roll, when we see what will tenants do going forward. Will office tenants remain in place? If so, will they remain in place with the amount of space that they have, or will they try to consolidate down to smaller space? I think we've got some interesting times ahead in the office market, and particularly the creative office market. That was the flagship of office space for quite some time, especially in the high-tech type areas. But right now, creative office, it's not so COVID friendly. And so I think office owners are going to have to rethink what they're doing with those spaces, trying to make them more amenable to social distancing, which is what we need today in this COVID-focused world.
Yeah, a little closer to home, just an example on how we look at this as a tenant. We're small fry. We have a small space here in my office here. But one of the things we're considering too is, we're paying Class B plus, Class A office rents with the amenity package that comes with it. And the vast majority of the amenities have been shut down due to COVID. And so the question in our mind is are paying those kind of rents worth it? We love the building, we love our operator, we love everything else about our experience. But I walk by the gym twice a day, can't use it, right? So I think there's some really minor considerations, smaller considerations than just necessarily, am I going to be taking on an extra 100,000 feet or not? It's also relooking at amenities.
I totally agree with you, and I think the other big factor is how will people respond when enough people have vaccines or what have you, and we're allowed to go back to offices. This has been a major global shift. People have been working from home, and for the most part, it's working. I know with my firm, we transitioned, we pivoted pretty quickly, got everybody to working from home. We got the communication technology working. And for the most part, people are very happy working from their homes. So in that kind of situation, you have to wonder, well, what is the function of an office? And will professionals want to come back to offices to work? The answers vary. I know I survey my staff, and I'm asking people out in the marketplace all the time. Some people say they won't come back at all. Other people say they can't wait to come back because they can't stand working from home. And there's a whole lot of people in the middle where I think we may see more of kind of office hoteling, where people who used to come to the office 5 days a week may start coming 2 or 3 days a week. And to make the space efficient, it may be that people will start sharing offices or sharing desks. And that could be much more cost efficient for office tenants, but it could be an issue for office property owners.
So just to step back a minute, David, it's my understanding, in addition to your appraisal practice, you also play a role as an owner and developer of grocery anchored retail centers. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I've since about 2006, I've been involved as a joint venture partner in developing grocery anchored shopping centers in the southeastern states, from Maryland down to Florida and all places in between.
So grocery anchored is obviously done fairly well relative to other retail classes or subclasses. But tell us about your experience with what you're working on, and if you or your partners are shifting priorities or reevaluating deals in light of the COVID experience at all.
You know, I've got to say, on that front, I continue to be just so pleased at how strong and resilient the marketplace has been for grocery anchored shopping centers. We have one center that has probably too high of a proportion of inline space, and that one's suffering a bit. We have a lot of restaurants, and some of those restaurants have had their troubles. But with the typical traditional grocery anchored center, with a grocer, some inline space, and maybe some out pads, the demand has been very strong. Tenants have been resilient. We've had very little tenant drop off, and strong demand for new space in new centers that we're building. In fact, we have one center we're building in suburban Nashville where we have 6 out pads. We haven't even broken ground on the development yet, haven't started the site work, and we have all 6 of the pads in play and soon to be spoken for. So the demand from the tenant side continues. Tenants are continuing to expand. The grocers are still hungry, particularly in the Southeast. They're very hungry to be expanding their footprint, and they're doing very, very well on their sales. And on the investor market, we certainly found that there was a hiccup when COVID hit. We actually had 2 of our properties in contract to be sold at very good prices. And when COVID hit, those sales fell out. So we've held on to the properties. We've waited to see what the market will do, but we're back under contract again and at prices that are very similar to where we were this time a year ago. So I've got to say, the grocery anchored sector is very strong, very resilient, and we're extremely bullish.
So in all the hats that you play, both on the appraisal side and as a landlord, what was one thing that you would be looking at if you were a landlord, if you put on their shoes, that they should be considering right now to help in their decision making, whether they're going to put a property back on the market as you did, or they decide to hold? You know, what do they need to be thinking about that's new in the post-COVID era?
I think the biggest change is just how granular things need to be with regard to the tenants, their ability to run a successful business and to continue to pay rent throughout the term of their lease. I know pre-COVID, we both as developers and as appraisers, we were happy to have a rent roll of leases and have tenants in place. And there was kind of a tacit expectation that tenants that have signed a lease that seemed like legitimate businesses should do well and should be able to continue paying the rent throughout the term of their lease. I think today people are more critical, more discerning on that front. I know buyers that have come to us, they really want to know tenant by tenant, how are these tenants doing, which ones are doing okay in light of COVID, which ones have pivoted well enough that they can operate in a COVID type marketplace. And I know from our perspective, both as a buyer of properties and also in the appraisal business, we're looking much more carefully at who are these tenants, how well are they backed up. If it's a franchise type operation, who's on the hook? Is it a corporate lease or is it a franchisee lease? If it's a franchisee, what is their wherewithal to continue to pay? Do they have one shop or do they have 200? Those questions are becoming much more material because they all speak to the risk of the cash flow and the durability of the cash flow, which is really what an investor is going to be looking for.
Well, David, this has been great. We're running a little thin on time, but if folks want to get a hold of you and learn more about how can they get in touch with you?
Two best ways to reach me. One is by email. My email is d.rosenthal@curtis-rosenthal.com. You can get that off our website as well, curtis-rosenthal.com. You can also call me on my cell phone. I'm available anytime, 310-901-8122. Always happy to talk to our friends through the CMBA and happy to brainstorm and kind of figure out the challenges out there in the marketplace.
Very nice. Well, with that, David Rosenthal, thank you very much for your time today, sir. And thanks for you all for viewing our conversation. Hopefully it was valuable. Stay tuned more from the CMBA for more conversations like these with more of our industry's active players. Until then, this is Cody Charfauros from Slatt Capital signing off. Thanks.